The first punch landed so fast it sounded like a door slamming shut on a future that had already been earned. On a narrow street in downtown Chicago, beneath the dull glow of a flickering street lamp, a billionaire CEO crumpled to his knees while four men closed in with the confidence of those who believed the world owed them something. In that moment, time felt fragile, like glass about to shatter, and somewhere inside you a question forms without permission. What if this were you on the ground, watching everything you built slip away? Would anyone step forward, or would fear keep every witness frozen in place? The man on the pavement was named Jonathan Hale, a self-made titan in tech whose name sat comfortably on magazine covers and donation plaques. But wealth does not make bones stronger, and money does not dull pain. Blood streaked the side of his face as his hands trembled, not from fear alone but from disbelief. He had grown up poor, survived boardroom wars, and buried his mother alone, yet nothing had prepared him for the raw animal hatred in the eyes of strangers who wanted more than his wallet. Around them, the city held its breath. Windows glowed above, cars passed at a distance, and no one moved close enough to change the outcome that seemed inevitable. Across the street, a diner's back door stood open, letting out the smell of burnt coffee and late-night regret. Standing just inside was a waiter named Michael Turner, a single father whose life had narrowed to double shifts, overdue rent, and the soft breathing of his 8-year-old son asleep on a couch that doubled as a bed. Michael had learned how to disappear, how to keep his head down and his voice low. Every choice he made was measured against the same fear. What if something happened to him and his boy was left alone? Watching the scene unfold, his heart pounded with that familiar terror, the kind that whispers to stay invisible. Michael's life had not always been this quiet. Years ago, before. Hospital bills and custody hearings hollowed him out. He had served in a part of the military that did not make headlines. He carried memories he never shared, scars he hid beneath long sleeves, and skills he had buried because they reminded him of everything he had lost. Those skills were supposed to stay hidden forever, because using them meant risking the one thing that still mattered. As he watched one of the attackers raise a wooden bat, something inside him cracked, and you can feel that moment too. The unbearable weight of choosing between safety and conscience. The woman clinging to Jonathan was named Rachel, his assistant, shaking and crying as she tried to shield him with her own body. She was not paid enough to be brave like this, yet there she was, standing between cruelty and a man who had once told her to chase her dreams. The attackers laughed, their voices sharp and careless, and the sound carried down the street like a challenge. Michael stepped forward without thinking, his body remembering what his mind tried to forget. He crossed the distance in seconds, the city noise fading into something distant and unreal. What happened next did not look heroic at first glance. There were no dramatic speeches or cinematic poses, only precise movement and controlled force. Michael disarmed one man, turned another's momentum against him, and moved with the calm of someone who had survived worse than this. Each strike was measured, each breath steady, because chaos had taught him discipline long ago. The fight ended almost as suddenly as it began. 4 attackers scattered on the pavement, groaning and stunned, while Michael stood shaking, his hands trembling now that the danger had passed. Sirens wailed in the distance, and reality rushed back in. Michael felt the familiar guilt rising in his chest, the fear that he had just destroyed the fragile life he had rebuilt for his son. Jonathan stared at him with wide eyes, seeing not a waiter but a man shaped by sacrifice and loss. Blood still ran down Jonathan's face, but his expression had changed, softened by something like shame. All his wealth had not saved him tonight, but the courage of a man who had nothing to spare had. In the days that followed, the story rippled through news feeds and office gossip, stripped of its deeper truth and reduced to headlines. Michael tried to return to his routine, wiping tables and counting tips, but the world would not let him disappear again. Jonathan insisted on finding him, not out of obligation but because something about that night had unsettled him deeply. When they finally met again, it was not about gratitude alone. It was about recognition, about seeing the invisible people who hold society together while being crushed beneath it. Jonathan learned about the son, the lost wife, the years of service that ended with a folded flag and no safety net. Michael learned that Jonathan had built his empire trying to outrun a childhood of hunger and neglect, only to discover that success did not protect him from helplessness. Their lives, so different on the surface, mirrored each other in quiet ways, shaped by fear and resilience. Change came slowly, not as a miracle but as a series of choices. A new job offer that respected Michael's past without exploiting it. Legal help that lifted a weight he had carried alone. A scholarship fund created not for publicity, but for children like his son. If you pause here, you might feel that ache in your chest, the one that asks what you would do if courage demanded something from you when you had nothing left to give. Would you step forward like Michael, risking everything for a stranger, or would you turn away, telling yourself it was not your responsibility? The answer is never simple, and that is what makes it human. Years later, Michael would walk his son to school under a brighter sky, his steps lighter, his shoulders less tense. Jonathan would still run a company, but with a quieter humility, aware that power means nothing without compassion. Their paths would cross again only occasionally, but the bond forged on that street remained, a reminder that hidden strength often lives where no one is looking. Before this story ends, take a moment and tell us in the comments how this moment made you feel, or what choice you think you would have made if you were standing there that night. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you reflect on kindness, courage, or second chances, gently show your support by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing, so more hearts can be reached by stories that remind us who we can be.